all out here being beasted day in, day out, and nobody's helping us. It's getting completely out of control. It was just broken man after broken man after broken man. And in central London, tier one contractor, they had a guy cut his own throat on the building site. And that same company had someone last year do the same thing, but with a noose around his neck, unfortunately. I thought, he's going to kill himself tonight, and the police are going to find him. They're going to pick his phone up, and I'm the last person he's ever spoken to.
The mental health crisis that has gripped the UK demolition and construction industry has divided the sector into two distinct camps. There are those that speak of their awareness, who post well-meaning social media posts on World Mental Health Day, and who appoint mental health first aiders to place a big tick on the mental health check sheet. And then there are those that take actual, tangible action. Steve Kerslake is of the latter category. A groundworker by trade and a survivor of PTSD, Kerslake has taken up the fight against the construction industry's mental health and suicide epidemic. And his weapon of choice is sport. Frustrated by some of the industry's efforts to combat mental health issues, he founded the construction sport charity. So, in this exclusive conversation, I started by asking him where and how it all began.
Pretty much all from first-hand experience, really, but yeah, I suppose coming to the industry when I was 16, 17 years old through a good friend of mine's dad who had a position as a labourer for me there. He said, do you want to join the company and come working with us straight after school? And that was pretty much off the football field. So, yeah, got into construction through sport, shall we say. And then, yeah, a couple of years down the line, I was caught up in an incident with sulfuric acid I'd thrown on me in 2008, 2009 time. And that then led on to I've done very well physically to get over it. There's not too many scars, but the effect that had on me personally over the next few years resulted into a lot of mental health issues in some respect. And I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I ignored that, knowing that I wasn't in the military. I didn't really feel like being just a guy who was caught out on a night out in the wrong place, the wrong time, really warranted what PTSD was. So I ignored it as much as I could for a number of years, and it haunted me in many ways. And I ended up physically suffering hugely with what was known as ulcerative colitis of the stomach. I then looked into some research on what ulcerative colitis is, and it's very much based with the stomach and how your stomach is related to stress and anxiety and the butterflies we get with nerves and that kind of stuff. And the two and two just linked very much. And I never know to the science of it today if that was, but it made a lot of sense to me that could have played a detrimental effect on what the operations I then was led on to have. And I went back onto sites throughout, in between operations that I had, and throughout all of this, I was always going back to the construction site, always back to the site. And then I realised that I had this anger towards the industry in terms of nobody cares about me or what's happened to me. And I wanted to go out there and just I had a lot of anger towards the world, really, not just the industry. And then I started looking after quite a few sites. Whilst I was in and out of these operations I couldn't be on the tools as much. And the company that I worked for were fortunate enough to say to me, you can serve a purpose to us still, and you can help go through my supervisor tickets and then onto a foreman kind of works manager role in the end. And then I realised that everybody I spoke to on site was going through something, and it was 100% of people. It was no 1 in 4, as they say, or 2 in 4 or 3, or whatever the stats were. I was like, we're all affected in one way, shape or form, and we're all out here being beasted day in, day out, and nobody's helping us. And I then was working on Crossrail for 5 years, and then I went to the senior management there and just said that we get a couple of days through for charity purposes, could I set up a walk and for us to do a big walking challenge. And I want to walk 100 miles from the western peak to the eastern peak of the project. That we were talking about stories about our past and our current lives, and that we never ever spoke about, and we worked together for 5-6 years before this. And I thought, why has it taken 5 years to find out that you're actually really struggling? And but his story was like, one of the main guys, his son wasn't too well at the time, and he's a big macho guy at home for the family, and he goes to work and he's a big P-way engineer, and he's a big tough character at work, and he doesn't have any time just to drop that guard. And then that's when I realised, by creating an opportunity to take part in a long distance walk or any sporting opportunity, that gives people the opportunity just to let off a bit of weight off their shoulders and just depress a little bit instead of compressing, shall we say. And just went from then. I went job to job, and it worked out big. I was very much in the freelance world as well, so it always worked as very much a positive string to my bow of what I could bring to a project. People would say, Steve, get Steve on board, help him out. He done a golf day for one of the lads that we'd done some work with a few years ago, and it worked really well. Get him on here, and he'll produce some events on the project I'm working on. And one thing led to another. There was a couple of charities out there and that I spoke to, and they wasn't too interested. So I went down the route on my own and said, how do I set up a charity? I spoke to a few good friends of mine, and they helped me. And then we got there after 3 years of fighting it. We got the charity status, and then walked straight into COVID. But now we're on the other side of that. So there's a short story of how it all works.
There's a couple of bits I want to pick up on that. You mentioned the term we're all beasted on site, and that is exactly the case, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. But he never. It's always program. So the groundwork side of it, and we worked with a lot of concrete over the years, and you always pushed for that big day of pouring concrete, and I was there pushing the guys as well. I'd at one stage 350 guys on the site that I was overseeing, and it was right. It's got to hit this target, and I was going into the office at 4:00 to report back on the day. Right, tomorrow you need to get to this step, and you get to this step. And then once we were finally ahead, then they just compressed the program. Now you need to get ahead again. There was never, right, lads, you've done well this Thursday afternoon. You're ahead of schedule. Concrete's coming Monday. Be ready for Monday morning. It'd be, right, that concrete on Monday, we're going to put that in Friday morning now. Crack on. And then I always say in the terminology of sports world as well, there's no pre-season in construction. And even to the military guys I speak to as well, and they go away on tour, and this is no disrespect or no comparison, but my view on is why we are so compressed with it always. There's no, let's have a bit of time and rest today, that we've done well in the last few weeks. There's never that. It's always, if we're ahead of schedule, bring the schedule closer, and we can push and push and push. And that only, obviously the statistics prove that only goes one way, unfortunately.
You've mentioned the fact that you spent a lot of time in the freelance world, and to my mind, that's one of the issues that is a contributory factor in all of this. The fact that you've got a great swathe of the construction workforce who don't know where the next job's coming from. They're not entirely certain on job security. They could be laid off at a moment's notice in some instances. That all contributes to the greater issue, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. We always said that. I actually had the same conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and he said about a few people being signed off sick, and he said you now at that point of the only people who get signed off sick and who go away for mental health issues potentially, who heads aren't right. They're never the self-employed people. Self-employed people can't afford to be having days off. And I speak to first-hand guys all the time who literally say, I can't have a day off to rest my mental health because I'm trying to chase money all the time, and if I have a day off, I lose my day's money. So that mental health benefit of having a day off is just, you get hit again the other way because you're now however much away from a bill that's going to be paid off. So there's no ease with it, is there? It's just kind of, and I agree. I spoke to a friend of mine from outside the industry, and he said it needs to all become employed. But then at the same time, that same big project that I worked on before with 350 people that I oversee, we got told on a Thursday afternoon by Monday that's got to be cut to 200 people just because they wanted to save some money. And we had to let the agencies know on site. They were in a hell of a pickle because they said that we've only got a day's notice to find 150 guys a job for Monday. But that was just as cutthroat as it is, and it is today for sure. I see it still firsthand that people saying, right, need to save. The thing that you really used to wind me up would be we need to save money, bang, right, cut labour, put more pressure on the other guys, they can pull rank a little bit. But then they wouldn't actually go around and take off the chart of what's on hire. And you could say, that's been sat there for months, this has been sat there for months, that's been sat there for months. If you off hire all those, you'll save a lot of money, keep the guys here, and we can deliver properly without as much pressure. But there is so many factors, like I say, still to today.
A lot of this feels like it is of the industry's own making. Obviously, you've just mentioned sort of the freelance, the agency workers never know where their next job's coming from. There's always uncertainty about, whether they'll be paid or paid on time or whatever it might be. You've also got that issue of people being forced to or required to work away from family, friends, support networks and that kind of thing, often for prolonged periods of time. We've effectively created our own perfect storm, haven't we?
Yeah, 100%. There's no kind of, let's say, a lot of the guys I've come across who come from up north will come down south for the week, and they've literally only see their kids. Maybe they'll get home late on a Friday, go out and drink on a Friday night, be hungover Saturday, and then by Sunday afternoon they're back in the van coming down again. So they get pushed to obviously having a drink, and it's become a culture where that's what they're used to, and it's a person. And I always done it. Someone has always said to me, if you don't want to do your boss's job, choose another career path. And that always played true in my head, because I was working on the railway side of things, and it was just broken man after broken man after broken man. And I could see it in families, and everybody's giving up their Christmases for their children because it's literally just the work's there and you push and push and push. And then 15 years down the line, when the kids aren't enjoying Christmas as much, that they've realised they've not even been there to support their kids or be there in person. They've financially supported them, but then that kind of relationship disappeared with the wife and kids. And again, it's just this recipe of disaster. Working away from home, probably the hours we do can play a part, but at the same time we're given opportunities to work by the hour and support and take as much as we can. And I was, for the railway world, we'd take 72 hours every week we could. But it was only then later on I realised, hang on a sec, I need to ease that off a little bit. And unfortunately, yeah, I have. I work local to home and not far from London, so I've never really had to travel too much. But we come across it every single day of people having to go out of their means to support their family, basically.
One of my concerns with all of this is there's been a drive over the past, I guess, 5 years or thereabouts for greater mental health awareness. We've got people running mental health awareness courses, mental health awareness first aiders and all that kind of thing. But awareness isn't actually the same as action, is it?
No, 100% not. We're in a position where the awareness is brilliant. It's great. Well, it was. We all know now. We know the industry is absolutely knackered in terms of mental health. There's no more awareness to be done. We're all fully aware of it. It's now, like you say, it's action. It's what can we do? The awareness thing's like probably a sore spot for me, really, because I'm just like, I know it's bad. The guys I work with live in it day in, day out, firsthand. They don't need to be told to be aware of their mental health. Their awareness is broken. But what are companies, what are the industry, what are the HSC doing about it? And last week looked great because it was Mental Health Awareness Week, but we notice it now, emails, we look at our attraction online and social media, it grinds to a halt as soon as these big days are over. And a very interesting conversation with a man yesterday, a good friend of mine, and he said these days where people highlight it for a day are actually going against themselves and triggering people with troubles. They feel like they can get the help because everyone's talking about it, and then tomorrow everyone goes quiet, and that person's there with a fresh memory, fresh nightmare in his head, say, with nowhere to support. But there's nothing to be done. And I deal with companies all the time as well, and I can see where they're coming from with it as well. And I say I run my own business as well now, and I know the pressures of chasing money all the time just to be paid on time to pay the guys. There's no again, the pre-season thing, but there's so much pressure on companies from the very top to just deliver, and that just, they can't focus enough on the workforce because they've got so much pressure on them as well. So as you said, we've created this perfect storm. But yeah, we're very much, and I say all the time, we'll talk about it and say awareness every now and then, but what more do we need to know? And to be honest, the statistics what are out there, I personally think are in a PC a load of cobblers. But the 1 in 4, the suicide, what we're seeing now, what they're saying, the suicide rate, what it is, 2 a day. That was 2 a day when I started looking into this 6 years ago. That now, to me, I think it's 1.5 to 2 a day. I think it's working at, but 2. It's been since before COVID. It was 2 a day, and I know firsthand just from living my own life just how much more pressure is on me since COVID hit. So I think the statistics, really, we should ultimately stand up and say they're none and void at the moment until we. And how can we get an idea of what world we live in? No one knows what's coming today and tomorrow at the moment, do we? So, yeah, we had this. We got contacted by the HSC last week. Actually, someone very senior within them contacted me to speak about it, and I said, "Yep, brilliant." And in a way, kind of said, "We're very much aware of talking about this proactively and action in this. So please do get us involved because all I'm reporting is the truth from the ground, and I am only one of the guys from the ground. It just so happens now that have created a good enough storm that people are starting to listen, or people are starting to hear us from below. Whether they're actually listening, that's another question. But people want to do stuff, and in a way, we're construction workers and we're a construction industry. We're not mental health experts. We're not mental health professionals. We need outside influences to come and do this. I don't agree with the Mental Health First Aid England course at all. I'd done that course, and within 6 weeks, I had someone ring me up from the worst case scenario. It's 9 o'clock at night. I'm sitting there with my 3-year-old baby and my wife, and this guy's rung me up who I don't even know. And I said, in all due respect, I said, this isn't the right question that you want to hear. I said, but how did you get my number? And he said, oh, a guy I know who works on a building site took your name off the board and he just sent it to me because he thinks it will help. And then I was in a position where, well, what can I do then? I've not been trained to deal with someone who's about to jump off something. So I rung a charity up and said, can you help him? And they turned around and said to me, we can't help him unless he calls you. And I said, well, he's not going to call you. He's confided in me because he knows someone who knows me. The only thing I could do was ring 999. So I rung 999 and said that the guy's number, I don't know where he is. He's at the worst case scenario, but he needs help. Fortunately, I found out from the guy I knew on site the day after. I had an interesting conversation with about distributing my number to the people, because he turned around and had that he was okay. But the fact of it, I was, in a very selfish way, I thought, he's going to kill himself tonight and the police are going to find him. They're going to pick his phone up, and I'm the last person he's ever spoken to. And I didn't sleep that whole night, and then go on to many, many jobs now, many, many projects. And it's always, we've done the mental health first aid course. We're covered. We've done it. We're covered. And it's very much, to me, it's been that the course is flawed to me in terms of it's not been rolled. Yeah, it's got content in there what's useful, but I don't think it's been rolled out right. And it's unregulated now, and there's companies out there just throwing it out over 3-4 day courses to lonely people inside an office at home. And to me, that's not healthy at all. But yeah, there's a long conversation to be had about that one.
One of the things that always strikes me, and you've mentioned the health and safety executive there, the construction and demolition industry generally hovers around somewhere between 30 and 40 fatal accidents on site per year. And once a year, the HSE and the demolition industry and the construction industry gets all up in arms about the fact that we've managed to allow 30 or 40 people to die in our midst. Yeah. And yet, when it comes to suicide, which isn't included within that, you're talking not 30 or 40, you're talking 400, 500, 600, possibly even more, because we're not entirely sure what the stats are. And yet, the same sort of response doesn't seem to happen.
It's bizarre, isn't it? As I say, I mentioned on the documentary thing we done, I said 2 people a day are killing themselves. I know firsthand these people 6 years ago, they wasn't on site. They were people you didn't really know about, to me personally. And then 3 years ago, around COVID time, I started to know people who knew people. Now we know people firsthand who are killing themselves. It's getting completely out of control. It's happening on sites. I know literally a company in central London, tier 1 contractor. They had a guy cut his own throat on the building site 6 weeks ago. Not a thing has been said outside of the realms of that, but I know because I know a few guys on the ground there. There's been, and that same company had someone last year do the same thing, but with a noose around his neck, unfortunately. But it's just not being spoken about. Whereas if that was a guy who was crushed by a pack of bricks or something because they've broken off a crane, the national press are all over it, and all the construction magazines and brochure outlets are all over it. But it is completely accepted now that they kill themselves every day. That there's nothing to report on really. That everyone is, but how is that morally right? That's why it baffles me that as an industry we can sit there and say we do a 2-day course now. What can help this? And if people are aware of it, they'll save lives. And then if they call certain helplines, they'll get it. But it's a minimal amount of people who ring helplines. If we just do what's human and communicate with people and give guys and girls an opportunity just to enjoy themselves away from the stresses of life, we prove it to a very small number. But if the industry just got behind this silly idea that I've got, I honestly believe we could fix a hell of a lot of problems. Well, it's going to be a tough world to ever get to zero, but another thing, saying zero, it's another thing. You look at all the exhibitions and all the shows, it's all about net zero. And I thought, imagine if we drove that much interest in what we do for net zero into making this number zero. I can't get too political, but it baffles me that how is that morally acceptable to watch this happen in front of our own eyes now? And like I say, there's people I know are witnessing this stuff in front of them. And you say that as well with the numbers as well, the 2 a day. And when you start looking back to the post-traumatic stress disorder that I've heavily looked into from my own experiences, these people are suffering with this, and we're inheriting this into our industry from other sectors like the military or the prison service. And so we bring everyone into the industry, and we don't do nothing about it. About what do we do to help them? Me and 2 colleagues spoke to over 3,000 people on HS2, and 2,500 of them, 3,000 of them, there's 50 of them, so 2,950 hadn't had any training. 50 people across the 3,000 had mental health first aid training. Not one of the people who had the first aid training was on the ground of the industry. And of all those 3,000 people, not one of them had had any kind of mental health training of some description, or just a little bit of education about mental health and what it is and how to deal with it. And we're all going to witness trauma in our life. We're all going to be slapped in the face by a loss of a loved one, or a loss of a pet, or seeing something we don't want to see. So we've got to prepare 100% people to deal with this. And if that's not negligence, then what is? And I said this with the HSC, and just look up the word negligence. And if you're negligent and you know there's a problem and you don't do something about it, then you're liable. So as an industry, as the HSC, as every single company, we could, if someone come along with the right frame of mind and was powerful enough, we'd be completely taken down, I believe. But it's crazy.
Well, I'm going to come back to what it is that you're doing about this. But you just mentioned something there, negligence. We often use the phrase within the industry, duty of care. We have a duty of care to our employees. We have to make sure they're wearing the high vis that you're wearing. They've got to have their hard hat, their sight boots, and their glasses and their gloves and all that kind of thing. But the duty of care seems to stop when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, well, they do. It's a complete the duty of care, like you say. And I've been in their accident reports and done things with different people. There's been injuries on site, and I've seen people lose their jobs because they've, like you say, the duty of care has not been there. But then as soon as that report's done and handed in, it's done. And there's no what happens after day 2 or day 3 when these people are away from site and they start having bad dreams or suffering mentally with these issues. There's no care there either. So how long that duty of care should be prolonged, I do believe, especially with results of PTSD and how 4 to 6 months you can start seeing signs and symptoms. And we know these people have witnessed something on site. They need to be seen by specialist companies as soon as possible. Whether they think they're going to suffer or not, they need to be supported. And I think you look at the riddles are in the tens of thousands every year. And I always say, with those tens of thousands of people, a riddle, we all know, isn't just a stub toe. It's someone's off work for 5 to 7 days, is it now? I think so that isn't. There's something there. What's happened? What isn't pretty? Or someone's witnessed something or felt something. And duty of care. Yeah, what is duty of care? It's a tough one to even explain that really in the construction sector.
As far as you're concerned, you said you had your PTSD. You've obviously had your own issues with mental health, and now you've thrown yourself in at the deep end with all of this. How do you build up the resilience to listen to stories of men cutting their own throat or hanging themselves, and then go home to your wife and children and stuff at the end of the day?
Sport is the answer, quite simply. Yeah, I train. I find my kind of free space in on a treadmill, and I love going for a jog. And I'll do that most mornings when I can, as and when I can. I've got my wife and 2 children. I speak with a specialist therapist company. I have ways and means that I deal with them as well. If I feel things are getting a little bit on top of me, it happens. It does, and it creeps up. And there's little trigger things for me that can ignite my past a little bit, but I know what they are, and I can spot the signs, and my loved ones around me can notice. Steve, I always say I'm like a dog, really. I said my wife looked to go, Steve, go for a run. I can see it's getting to you, and it's literally they take the lead off and open the door and let me go and run around the streets. But yeah, there's nothing that it doesn't. And you see it all now. We played actually a rugby match last week. It was a fire brigade, and they really opened our eyes to a bit about how they deal with different stuff, and they go back, then they chew the fat, they called it, literally back in the station, and they just get that a good chat going together. But yeah, I'm very, very much aware of what I deal with and what we see and what we hear on the coal face of it all is that, number one, I need to look after myself, because before you know it, and very fortunate now there's been a lot of press over the last few weeks, but it gets to me. It does get to me 100%. But I just need to know that I put it into a positive way, a positive channel, and get rid of it positively. Because the last thing I want to do is put it through a bottle and take that home. It's not healthy for anybody.
Now, you've mentioned that your personal solution is sport. That is obviously the crux of what construction sport is all about. How does that work? I mean, you've mentioned, I think you've mentioned rugby, you've mentioned running, you've mentioned football. What is construction sport? Take me through that.
So it's pretty much, it's me being completely selfish and just saying sport works for me. So I'm going to create a sporting opportunity to enjoy myself. And guess what? It just so happens it works for all the guys I work alongside. I'll say, look, I'm going to organise a five-a-side football match, or we're going to go and play golf the weekend. We want a few four balls to go out. Let's do it. We'll get the companies to sponsor it and we'll do it. Or we'll go on a long-distance walk. We've done one from Twickenham to the Excel Centre for a big exhibition there, UK Construction Week. And they asked us to open it, and I got all the bridges sponsored with it. And we had 50 of us who walked through the night to open it. But all I want to do is bring companies on as members now, basically, just to show that they're supporting what our silly idea is, this basic idea, and they want to be associated. And by getting associated to us, I don't say that I just want you to support us. So when I come into your office and I say to you, I want a few people, I want a few volunteers, and you've got to help me, and they do, and they love it now, and it works really well. And I'll drag people out there, and people know I won't ring up someone and take a no for an answer. I'll go in there and grab their arm and say, come on, we're going out. And if you can get people, and I use sport, but a lot of people, could be instruments, could be music. It's finding what your hobby or your passion is and giving yourself time to enjoy that. I noticed this with the age. I think they say like 35 to 49 is a bit of a dangerous period of time with men's health. And I truly believe that's because we start to fall away from school at 16. Our social circle at school, it takes a hit. I went into the rugby world. A lot of my friends went into the football world. They end up in a group of friends on their own. I end up in my clique of group. We're still friends, but we're all week in, week out. That group of friends went down to a short few. Then the ladies get involved and families are created. And then that goes down to, I'll only be down the club once a month, maybe, or twice a month, or I can't make training as many times. And suddenly, before you know it, you're hitting these later ages in the 35s and that. And then injuries are starting to occur. You're taking on more problems of the body. And then you start realising I'm not as fit as I used to be. And then you almost cocoon yourself and get into this little dark hole of sitting back. And I'm 33, so I know in a way I've got this to come, these dangerous years maybe. But in a way, I suppose I'm trying to prepare myself. But whatever you do, just allow people that opportunity, a time to do it. And I think you've got to be selfish away. And I've spoken to this ago. There's a company I've spoken to highly with, and they always say 70% of your time focus on 70% of your time at work. Think about being professional and delivering the job and do what you do, but be selfish. And at 30% of your day, focus on what you're eating, the water intake, stretching your legs, and all this stuff. But as well as that, go home and do it in the same way. So put 70% towards your family and your loved ones and your kids, but be selfish enough to say, I need my 30%. I need to go for a run. I need to go and play a game of football. I need to go and play in the band or whatever you do, or I need to go and, I don't know, whatever sport or hobby you have. Just always don't forget what you love doing and make sure you can enjoy it as much as you can, because they've got these community. They've all got their own communities and circles of people that all support people with the same idea.
We'll come back to round off in a second just to find out where we find out about construction sport. I'll put the details of the website up.
Yeah.
But one of the things that occurred to me there, you've mentioned about the fact that there are people out there that are struggling right now. My guess is you're not encouraging them to phone you at work if they are struggling with mental health. Who should they phone? Who do they turn to if you're working in construction or demolition or an allied industry and you are struggling, or you know somebody's struggling?
Yeah, this is one we focus on quite a lot, actually, because I was very much there, but from personal experiences, I was kind of more of a case of you've got to look at the man who's next to you, the guy who works next to you. The gang of I always compare it to being the groundwork gang that we had. They're the core team that know me. And when I get in the van at 6 o'clock in the morning, they know in a second if I've had a bad day or a bad night, just from my body language. take some trust in the people you work alongside. Now, it's a very strange world, I suppose, with remote working now, and it's a very different place. But you've got to create the times to the people you work with support you more. You're with them more than you are your own family. But identifying and understanding what mental health is, and then just literally saying that, oh, you're right, let's go for a drink. Let's go for a bit of dinner tonight. Just a cup of coffee, something. Support the people and support yourself with the people alongside you. And I think we can do well. Yeah, there's professional help out there. There's a number of obviously helplines and that. There's plenty of those, but it's just support the people who are close to you and understand when someone's having a bit of a downer, just take it easy on them a little bit and just ask for another 10 minutes at coffee and just have the chat. And you notice it now. I've just been away the weekend and we are starting to realise this now. And I get it a lot from close friends of me now that go, Steve, and they all say to me, look, it's tough. And then when you speak about this 35-year-old plus sort of thing, I've got guys on my shoulders that are big guys who I know, they're literally in tears saying it's hard because life is tough and you've got to realise it's only getting tougher, unfortunately. And there's not enough support out there. We see that through the NHS. You can't get appointments for nothing. So we've got to find the balance and the truth in ourselves to help each other. There's nothing better than actually just helping someone. We see it firsthand. I shook all these guys, 30, 40 people's hands last week after the game of rugby we played. And you can see in each other's eyes that it meant something. When you tap on something, especially with what I'm doing now, I don't need the guys to say thank you to me. They can just shake my hand and you can see it in their eyes. That's enough to know that they're not actually on their own. So if you've got someone who's struggling, don't ask them to open up. Just give them a little taster in what you're going through and how you get through stuff. Because when he realises that, he's not the only one who struggled to pay a bill this month, or he's not the only one getting a bit of hassle at home, or he's not the only one whose mortgage has just gone up £500. When you've realised you're not the only one, so a problem shared is a problem halved sort of thing. So confiding the people closest to you is probably my answer. And that's different for everybody, I understand, but just find your community of people, find the people you work with, and just be patient, bear with, and there's bad ideas or bad thoughts that come into your head, they will go away. And I had it a few days ago, only for this actually, was going through a bit of a dark few days. I think there's been a few peaks over the last few weeks, and then there's been a few downs. And then we just found out a poor friend of ours who passed away a couple of days ago. He had a heart attack, I think it was. But I said to the guys, literally, I said, don't stress. As I said to the guys who know, I said that the stresses that we're having, there's some personal stuff. A friend of ours has just dropped down overnight. I said, what are our problems really? I was like, they're not problems, are they? They're really not problems. That is a problem. When life takes you, that's a real problem. So don't take yourself there.
So construction sport. When is the next five-a-side? When is the next golf game? When is the next rugby sevens? I don't know. How does it work?
Yeah, so I've been asked. We've done a rugby match 2 weeks ago, and I actually asked already, can we put another rugby game together as quick as possible? But we are going to be walking HS2 from Birmingham to London, start of December. That is now going to be. It was going to be start of November, but because of a busy period of time for us at the moment, we just put that back a little bit. So we're going to be walking over 3 days, 120 miles, and we're inviting people along throughout the route to join us along the way. There's 6 of us as a core team who are going to do that. That's one of the things. We've also got a day of an ice skip challenge we're doing in West London. Power Day Waste Management have put together a massive skip, and we're bringing a massive ice bath back actually, and we're bringing a company in to pretty much educate people about the benefits of ice and cold water therapy basically. So that's another one. What have we got for next year? We'll be doing I think we're going to do it in spring. We're going to do a walking marathon in London. We'll meet somewhere in central London at 6 a.m, and we'll do 10 hours of walking. And those 10 hours are huge. But yeah, we're kind of at the moment, this time of year, we're getting the calendar ready for January onwards. It's been a busy year of just doing events as we go. But now we know COVID is kind of behind us. We can try and plan out what's going to be going on as we go. So there'll be 5-a-side football matches popping up here and there. Yeah, rugby events, golf events pop up all the time. We try not to do too. We go with the golf events that our clientele now go to, because we realise at the same time it's tough for the workforce to be involved in those events, because a lot of the time it's very much a white collar place. But we're trying to say pretty much drag a few people out of site and bring them to play golf as well. But yeah, many different things popping up all the time. We've got to set a lot of stuff in the diary. We're very much live on LinkedIn's a big one for us with the advertising, what we do for companies to get involved, and then a lot of stuff for the workforce as such is we try and do through means of, say, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and yeah, every angle of social media basically.
So, final question then on that basis: where can people find out more about construction sport?
Yeah, so they can get in touch with us via email, info@constructionsport.com. That's the best one. We can actually get everything out to everybody. And then also, where are we? Yeah, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook are all construction, pretty much all at Construction Sport. So I think Twitter is at Construct Sport, but everything is Construction Sport.
Awesome stuff. Well, I'll go and give you a follow on all of those. Steve, I really appreciate your time today. Wish you every success with Construction Sport. It sounds like a fantastic idea